But when we talk about our faith, it is, I've found it's a challenge sometimes not to go to that level when you don't need to. And oftentimes we don't need to.
You don't have to go to these deep theological, I've got to, pull out the catechism of the Catholic Church every time I'm going to explain something.
Right.
And we are live.
Good morning, Chad. How are you?
I'm good, Jeff.
Good.
How are you?
I'm great.
Welcome to the Catholic Dads Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for listening. How you been?
I've been good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
We're supposed to do like a banter thing, and I'm just not feeling it this morning. Maybe we should just drop right into the topic.
Banter just doesn't flow to me.
Maybe we just drop right in.
We shout out to the Catholic stuff guys so much that it's like the banter is really an homage to them. I think that's the only ones that do it.
There's a few other ones that seem like maybe they do it, but not to the extent that it's part of their shtick.
Yeah.
Right? They talk about the time and they do all that stuff. So.
Yeah, well, we don't need to do that.
Yeah, we don't. No, not today. We have important things to discuss.
We got very important things to discuss. So, tell us about your topic, Jeff.
So I thought it would be fun to do sort of a modern or current events topic. Although the last topic was somewhat of a downer of a current events topic. So you saw the Chris Pratt MTV Generations Award speech. If you guys haven't seen it, it's on YouTube. It was all over Facebook. All of the religious pages that I follow and conservative pages picked it up and edited it, because it was this amazing celebrity talking about faith in a public square forum and, how incredible that is. And it really got, blown up or every, all that. So I went and listened to it. I thought it was fantastic. It was a great speech. Chris Pratt has a great personality. Yeah. If you've seen his videos, we're a big, or his movies, we're a big fan of him. For those that don't know, he's the Guardians of the Galaxy. The name just jumped out of my head. Thank you. Not enough coffee yet this morning. He's also in the Jurassic Worlds. Just a fun actor. Which I would not have known that. I haven't seen the most recent one yet. I think I'm the only person in the family that hasn't seen it, but they all liked it.
He's the new Indiana Jones figure, basically. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. He's kind of the guy that shows up everywhere.
Sam Neill in the original Jurassic Park
was
actually like Indiana Jones. I think that's actually how they pitched it. It's Indiana Jones, but he's a dinosaur hunter. Instead of an archaeologist.
He's a paleontologist.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. So he's,
I'm sorry, but Chris Pratt is not a paleontologist in Jurassic World.
Yeah, no, he's just a trainer.
Animal behaviorist or something like that.
Yeah. Speaks the language of the raptors. Yeah. Raptor whisperer. But his speech was amazing. And the thing that, except for one part, which was just a crazy, I don't know where he was going with that whole lesson number 7, but it was nine lessons of life. Yeah. And, if we were a little more media savvy, we would have let's cut to the interview, Chad. And we'd actually have the audio and stuff, but it was really good in what struck me. We could probably build it in somehow, maybe at the end of the podcast, or we could just post it to the page too. I thought about doing that. So we'll do that next week. We'll post it to the page, and then everybody can go watch it. But the thing that struck me the most about how he talked about his faith was how sort of clear and concise he was, and how much of a reaction he got from the crowd with the things that he said. So one of the first things that jumped out at me was, and I think it was like his lesson 1 or 2, right, was you have a soul, protect it.
Yeah.
And that was all he said. Lesson number 3 was about how to feed a medicine to a dog, put a little meat and wrap it up and you won't even know it's there. So he had these really funny, he kind of went back and forth between this faith. But it was such an impactful shock the way he talked about it that way, right? Is you have a soul, protect it. And that's all and he got this huge cheer. And then by the end of the speech, you could tell that the people that were there that are people of faith really got into it. I mean, they cut to a scene and there was a family that was all like, high-fiving each other and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really good. He talked about grace, right? He talked about our imperfection. He talked about praying later in the speech.
Yeah.
And he said praying is good for your soul. So he tied it back to that first part. It was really a homily. In one of the, I don't remember if it was Babylon Bee or Eyes on the Tiber, posted Chris Pratt does best homily in 30 years or something like that. So the topic today really is, have we thought about and do we look for models of how best to talk about the faith to our young people, because this was the MTV Generation Award, to people around us, and especially as Catholic dads, and more generally even as Catholics, we have a rich tradition. We have apologetics. We have colleges. We have theology degrees. We have priests that have...
We personally don't have theology degrees.
We know those people, though, and they send us... No, they don't. But we have this incredible depth to our faith, which we never want to, we don't want to get rid of, and that's not what I'm saying. But when we talk about our faith, it is, I've found it's a challenge sometimes not to go to that level when you don't need to. And oftentimes we don't need to. If you want to share the faith, especially with your kids, especially with someone that's not in the faith, a coworker that just drops by and has a quick question or whatever, Chris Pratt's really, I think, a model for that. It's like, why are you a Christian in the first place? Well, I believe I have a soul, and I believe it was created by God, and I need to protect it. Right? I believe it's a beautiful thing to be a human being, and there's a good way to live. And that good way to live has been told to me by a man that died because he wanted me to live that way. He died for me so that I could live the best life that I could live. What else do you want to know? Just very simple, very clear. So I'll kick it over to you and get your thoughts on it, because you watched the video too,
so
right?
Should we say the 9 rules? I pulled them up here.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, go ahead.
I won't read them verbatim. I'll just say the thing. So the number 1 was breathe.
Yeah.
If you don't, you'll suffocate.
Very true.
That was funny. But yeah, so that was number 1 was breathe. Number 2, you have a soul. Be careful with it.
Be careful with it.
Number 3 is don't be a turd. In this one, it talks about this was, I thought, really good as well, because it says if you're strong, be a protector. If you're smart, be a humble influencer. So
Yeah,
that was really awesome.
That was really good. If not, you're a bully.
Being a bully, yeah. Number 4 is when giving a dog medicine. Number 5 is doesn't matter what it is, earn it.
Which also got a huge cheer, by the way, which is interesting.
Yeah. Number 6, God is real. God loves you. God wants the best for you. Believe that. I do. That's really where it really started, like, giving me goosebumps. Yep. Number 7 is like the poop at the party thing. Number 8 is learn to pray. It's easy and it's good for your soul. And number 9, nobody's perfect. People who are going to tell you that you're perfect just the way you are, but you're not. You're imperfect. You always will be. There's a powerful force that designed you that way. If you're willing to accept that, you have grace, and grace is a gift. And like the freedom that we enjoy in this country, that grace was paid for with somebody else's blood. Do not forget it. Do not take it for granted. I was like, wow. Yep. That was awesome.
Yep. Drop the mic and walk off the stage.
Yeah. So, my thoughts on that was, realistically, I don't think it hit me like I think it hit you. Mm-hmm. And I guess the reason why is, like, Chris Pratt, yes, I think it's great whenever celebrities do things like this, because they're in the spotlight and they're getting all the media attention. And so obviously it's great mm-hmm. whenever they stand up for life or stand up for the faith. I think that, the whole poop at the party thing, I think what he was trying to do was, like, he didn't want it to get up there and be a sermon.
Right.
Because that's certainly not what MTV would want.
Right.
So,
and you've got to figure that they vet everything that's said,
he was
of course, right?
Reading from a
exactly. Yep.
Clearly reading from a teleprompter. So, and that's fine. That's cool. So, I guess it's like, and when you were kicking this topic back to me, I'm like, but what do you mean? Mm-hmm. I think I asked you like 3 or 4 times, like, but I don't really follow what you're saying. So, but yes, whenever he speaks about his faith and he's reaching the kids, and yes, he's making it simple. He's boiling it down to to the grass, roots or whatever, if you will. It's like, you have a soul, protect it.
Yep.
You don't have to get into theology of what, and I totally agree with you on that. I think where I went with that and where I took it is why we have a video camera in here right now.
Right.
Is what it inspired me to do, and inspired by what you were saying, is I spoke to my kids, and I was, my 3 oldest are all teenagers. And I'm like, well, how do you get information? Because if we're trying to do something with this podcast, it's about reaching a generation. So maybe as Catholic dads, we're not really trying to reach with our message teenagers right now, because hopefully teenagers aren't dads yet. I mean, unless they're married, and how many 18, 19-year-old, guys are married.
Yep.
There are some. I'm not trying to discount that. But, looking at the demographic, I would venture to say the vast, vast majority are not teenagers. So, but what I was trying to say is, like, to be relevant in this world, to be relevant to those whenever they are older and they do have kids, and they are looking for answers, or they're looking to find out, to supplement their faith, well, where are you going to go?
Yep.
So I know that as an adult, I'm kind of stuck in my ways. And so I go to the ways that I used to do it, and I know how to do it, and it comes more natural with me. So when they're older, well, what are they doing? How do they find information and whatnot? So I asked my 3 oldest, what did you do? And Ellie and I had this big conversation. He said, YouTube. Mm-hmm. He said, YouTube is everything. You've got the platform for blogs, or vlogs, or whatever you call it. Right. But he listens to podcasts on YouTube, and I'm like, what's a podcast on YouTube? Mm-hmm. It was usually just a video of people talking. I'm like, well, how interesting is that? But I mean, this is like,
there's more of a connection maybe with the face and with the personality and all that stuff.
It's not just and I told him, I was like, okay, well, let's work on that. So that's why we're trying this little,
experiment.
This experiment.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's a valid point that we have to go to, or you don't have to go to these deep theological, I've got to, pull out the Catechism of the Catholic Church every time I'm going to explain something.
Right.
And the tagline for our podcast is, a couple of Catholic dads trying to keep it real while living the gospel of Jesus Christ, because that's what it really boils down to.
Yep.
Living the faith isn't easy all the time. It's hard to follow some of the teachings of the church. So how do we do it every day? And you don't want to get up and preach, and I think the whole St. Francis thing is like, preach the gospel always and use words if necessary, which I don't think it really came from
I don't think you ever said that, right? Yep.
But I'm just saying, it's like, that's really what we should be striving to do.
That. I always think of the, like sort of the missionary type stereotype. So the Seventh-day Adventists or whoever shows up at your door, it's like, we'd love to tell you about Jesus Christ, right? And even as a Catholic, you're like, gosh, that's just not the delivery that you need in the delivery here, because there's a sense of when it comes to faith, especially I think in the younger generations or even just in the world in general, there's a real jaded, like, oh, I've already heard about that. Like, we're post-Christian, we're a post-Christian Europe, we're a post-Christian America. Everybody knows Christianity. Yeah, that was like last century's deal, right? And one of the things that came out of his speech is he made it relevant to the way that this generation needs to think. So if you approach anybody in this day and age about Jesus Christ, I'm making a summary because I know there's videos out there where, they'll go to New York City and ask people about, Jesus Christ, and they're like, oh, I don't know who that is, I've never even heard about it before, whatever. But generally speaking, the people get the general gist of the faith. And so if you come at them with, Jesus Christ died for you and you're a sinner and we're sinners and everybody's sinners, like, yeah, you know what, I've heard that, I've seen the movies, I've heard this TV, we've been inundated with this story and I'm not buying it. Right, where he broke through that with the way that he spoke about it really struck me. Right, so he went to the idea of, you've been created, you're not perfect. This world will tell you you're perfect, but everybody knows in your heart that you're not. Everybody knows that we're all flawed. Everybody knows that everybody around us are all flawed, and we're all flawed together in this thing. And by talking about, if you accept that, you will get this thing called grace that was bought for you from someone who bled and died for you. Yeah. Without even saying who it was. Yeah. That is so engaging to, well, at least for me, and I think for the generation that heard that, right? You have a soul. You're not perfect, but neither am I. And that's okay, because if we accept that together, we can start changing the world. We can start making this a better place, even though we're flawed.
Yeah.
And I can prove it to you because somebody died for you and did that.
Yeah.
And that's where that went for me. And I thought that was great. And it broke down that wall, because if you come at them with church, dude, I'm not going to church. What are you, crazy?
Yeah.
I'm not interested in church. That comes way later in the development of your faith.
Yeah.
Right? You've got to start with somewhere. You have to start with somewhere. And our sponsor that brought into the church, Andy Marini, I'm sure they don't listen to the podcast, but just, a beautiful family up in Colorado that were our sponsor, my mentor. He said, if you're ever going to talk to anybody about the faith, you have to start with God. And you have to start with the idea of, do you believe in God? Because if you don't believe in God, you can't talk about the Eucharist. And you can't talk about baptism. You can't talk about confession. So he said, if anybody ever comes to you and says, well, why do Catholics, why do you go to confession? Well, let me turn that back on to you, because confession comes out of faith. And if we're not at the same place talking about faith, there's really no reason to talk about confession, right? So if you believe that there's a God and I believe that there's a God, then we have commonality and we can go from there. You have to take it all the way back up to this starting point. Yeah. And I think we always jump to the end. Yeah. Or we're challenged with the questions at the end, and oftentimes we try to defend our faith at the end, or we try to convince our kids with the stuff at the end, right? Yeah. Oh, the Eucharist is amazing because that's the body and blood of Christ. Yeah. Yeah, I'm struggling with this God thing. I don't really even believe I have a soul.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about that first, right?
Yeah, so this is awesome that we're having this conversation. And I think I say that on almost every podcast. For sure, almost every one of your topics.
So, in going back and listening to old podcasts, I'm pretty sure I always say, I think I'm going to land this bird. So in this podcast, I'm not going to say I think we're going to land this bird, because I'm using Chris Pratt. He already landed it, so I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. So funny. Go ahead.
But you just said it, so maybe.
No, I didn't say I think we're going to land this bird.
You just said it again.
No, I didn't.
So I can't recall what it was that kind of spurred this thought in my head. This was before we even talked about this podcast, before the Chris Pratt thing came up. But when you talked about missionaries coming to your door. So, number one, I want to give a shout out to the Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses and all those that go knocking door-to-door missionary, because they're doing what Christ told us to do.
Right.
Okay, when's the last time you went and knocked on a door? When's the last time I went and knocked on a door?
Halloween.
Okay. Hasn't done. Yeah, exactly. Hasn't happened.
Right. Yep.
But what I was thinking is, I was thinking, if I were to go knock on doors, what would I say? Right. Okay. And we have, for the past 4 years, maybe even 5 years, we've had an apologetics group for the homeschool boys. It's a Catholic father-son apologetics night. You've been to a couple. And we follow mainly this Tim Staples video. So this Tim Staples video, and I can't remember the name of it, but it starts from "There's a God." Yeah. And it goes all the way from "There's a God" to Catholic Church. Yeah. And so it's like in all the little pieces in between. And this is like a multi-week deal, you know. So it takes, I want to say it takes, I don't know, it maybe even took a year, because you're sitting down for about an hour. You don't want to.
And it's once a month. It's not real long.
It's kids. It's 10 years. Once you're 10 years old, you can get into the group, and the boys really look forward to it. Well, anyway, my thought was, it was like, maybe that's the way I would go about it. Is I would say, I would try some way to make it, not so, do you know that there's a God? Yeah. It would be some way, but my thoughts would be present the faith like that in a very short and concise manner from there's a God to the Catholic Church. Right. And then I would say, where do you find yourself on that spectrum? Yeah. Because that would be where, so it's like from God to Catholic Church, to the full revelation of truth in the Catholic Church in Jesus Christ. Where on that spectrum would you think you'd find? So, and then they would say, you know what? I believe in God. I believe in Jesus Christ. But this whole the Catholic Church is the one true church and all that. I don't believe that. And then you would say, okay, well, would you mind talking about that? I mean, that kind of just came to me that day, and like, not that I put that into practice or anything, but it is brewing back there. And it's kind of talking about what you were saying.
So I would go in, I think obviously we're in the Bible Belt down here in Texas, and Kingwood's a very faith-filled community anyway. But I would say if you went outside into the real world, and this is where Chris Pratt, I think, really hit some nerves. I think you have to step even farther on that spectrum to the left or the right, whichever side you were on, before you even start talking about whether there's a God. I think you have to personalize it, because our culture is all about the personal. It's all about the new agey, the spiritual, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's where he really hit home. So I've got a cousin on Facebook that did a whole post about the illegal family separation stuff, right? And she's very spiritual. She's like an atheist, blah, blah, blah. But she talked about the souls, these beautiful souls. We have to protect these beautiful souls. So it's still part of our culture and it's part of our language, even if you don't believe in God, even if you're an atheist. So I would go even further back and say, something aligned. I'd have to think about this more to phrase it well, so I probably won't do it right now, but something about, were you randomly generated from the cosmos, or were you created? Or, are you unique as a created being and something special, or are you not? Yeah. Right? You almost have to go to that level, because that's where it starts, right? If you find somebody that's never been exposed to anything religious, and you sit down with them and say, are you a random assembly of atoms and molecules that work under electrical conduits, and then when you die, you'll be nothing but go back to the randomness of the cosmos? Or are you something special in the history of the universe that something cares about? Yeah. And start there, because if you're created, or if you're not just a random assembly of stuff, then something is there, right? Then explain to me how you're not a random assembly of stuff. Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. Well, that's what we call God. And that's where that starts, right?
I'm just saying that's kind of dangerous. It's very dangerous whenever you start, because I've been in, when I started my whole faith, coming back to the faith, I was like, from a defensive point of view, from an apologetics point of view, and that's, you can't put it that way, because they will shut you off. I mean, it's just, you have to lead people to Christ somehow. I think you do that, number one, with the way you live your life. If people see the way that you live your life as that you're, and not to say that we're always going to be happy and, all that. I mean, we're allotted our bad days too. But I mean, if people in general see you living a grace-filled life, and they will be drawn to that. Yep. People are drawn to truth and goodness and beauty, and because you're living a life that kind of reflects that, they're drawn to that. And I think there's a way that you can say all the things that you were just saying, but without being like, well, do you believe it's random, or do you believe it's not? I mean, you tell me which one it is. I mean, that would be very confrontational.
Well, that's why I said we'd have to think about how to phrase it. But that would be the point, right? You have to go, because I think outside of Kingwood, Texas, in Denver, Colorado, in Los Angeles, in Seattle, you're going to run into a lot of people that are living their lives because they're not hurting anybody else. Yeah. And that's the extent of their religion. That's the extent of their faith. And as long as I'm not hurting anybody else by what I'm doing, what do you care? Yeah. And you have to break through that. And he did that by talking about your soul, by saying that you're not perfect and I'm not perfect. He personalized it outside of anything related to God, anything related to church, anything related to Jesus Christ.
Yeah, he made it because you have this thing.
You have this.
This is what you have in you right
exactly. Now. And that's where he was breaking through this cultural thing.
I love that. And I also think that one of the neat things, and I'll call it clever, because, the days of people dogging our soldiers are over, thank God. Yep. Now they'll go after the government, and sometimes rightfully so, right? But nobody is going to spit on a soldier when he comes home from a tour of duty anymore. So I'm very thankful for that we don't live in that kind of culture. So because everybody will talk about the freedom, your freedom is paid for by somebody else's blood, meaning, the soldiers who have fought and died for us, for our country. Yep. And everybody, almost full stop in the United States would say, like, I'm 100% behind that. Yeah. And whenever he tied that together, dude, I got goosebumps right now just thinking about it. Like, that was awesome. Yep. I don't think I ever would have made that connection. Yeah, exactly. He made that connection. He made it to a generation that's coming up that's very, how do you say it? Like, it's, they're
globalist.
Well, right? Yeah, but I'm trying to say, like, they're listening to people. They can be influenced. Yeah. I don't know whatever the word is, but it's early. But it's like they can be influenced by these by these people.
Yep.
He said it in a way, like you said, I mean, very relatable to them. So I thought it was very well done. Could have done without all the little jokes in between, but
right.
Perhaps that was a way to like make it so much not like we're being preached to by Chris Pratt.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was, and I took it that way. It was like a switch, right? Turn it on, turn it off. Turn it on, turn it off. And then the last one was like I turned it on and then turned it way up.
Yes.
Right, and then walked off the stage.
Yeah, it was.
So
great.
I think that was great.
That's awesome, man.
All right. Well, cool. Let's bring it home. I think we have a shout out.
We do have a shout out. So you may recall that in several of our episodes we talked about we have an email address and we promise that we'll get back to you. We'll answer your email.
Please email us all the time. CatholicDadsPodcast@gmail.com.
So we actually we had a little
technical difficulties. That's all. It's just technology.
Technical difficulties.
That's all.
I had an email sitting in the Catholic Dads email box, and it was from Vince Salmon, and Vince was talking about that he made a comment that we talk about Scouts a lot because we both had boys in Scouts, and he said that maybe we should do a podcast on some of these other organizations that are out there. So Vince, thank you very much for your email. Sorry that it's been late in the shout out, but we'll take a look at those other organizations.
We definitely want to do a Scout podcast. The older boy just got back from summer camp last weekend and had an amazing time. So yeah, I think we need to do a Scout podcast. I don't think there's a better organization for men in the development of men out there. And I know there's some other organizations, and we've looked into them around Kingwood and stuff. So we can definitely talk about that. But I think we'll do a Scout podcast at some point for sure, because it's a part of our family's DNA at this point.
Yeah.
Just with how much I've seen in the growth, the leadership, the opportunities. My boy got to scuba dive. There was a dad that showed up that was a dad of one of the counselors, and there was a military base by the camp they were at, and he just rolled in with all of his scuba gear and said, if you want to learn how to scuba dive, I'll be here all afternoon.
Wow.
First come, first serve. And my boy was like, I'm going to get there, sign up, do it. And that, I mean, what a lesson in life, right?
Yeah.
The victory goes to those who show up, right?
Yes.
The win goes to those who show up. You show up and do it.
Yeah.
So he got to scuba dive for like an hour and a half, got to, do all the training, went down. So it's amazing. So yeah, we'll definitely do a podcast on Scouts. But thanks, Vince, for your email. Sorry that we didn't get to it. We do appreciate it. Keep sending them in. I think the technical difficulties are fixed. So thanks for the shout out. Thanks for being out there. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody being with us, and we hope you have an awesome day.
St. Joseph.
Pray for us.